Yeah, so here's something I've been asking a lot of folks lately, and it never really seems to get less strange as I say it, but how are you holding up during this pandemic?
Thanks for asking. We're doing as well as we possibly can. It's most tough on my kid because, of course, kids aren't meant to be cooped up indoors, and we're doing everything we can for him. But honestly, it's like we have food, shelter, diapers, formula. So honestly, what can we complain about? So the thing that's that tears me to pieces is knowing that there are people out there who love their children as much as I do, but they don't have the support, the resources, the means to take care of them, and that hurts me.
Yeah.
And so if I do get a platform, I will just encourage people, if you can afford it, please donate to food banks, diaper banks, whatever you can help with, because it's a rough time for everybody, but it's really rough for people who simply just don't have the financial means to be able to take care of themselves and their family.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you kind of called that out, because more often than not, we kind of get focused on the business of things or how this affects, industry or production. And, I'll definitely touch on that too, because it's part of the kind of culture that we have now today. But I think it's also important to remember the kind of human cost that's out there too, the ones that don't really make the headlines all that much. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, like, that's the thing, was I caught myself thinking, if I only had a backyard, this would be so much different. I could totally manage this. My kids would be so much better off. And then I'm like, that's when the thought occurred to me. That's what some people are saying about food. Yeah. And that's what people are saying about shelter and diapers and rent and formula and stuff like that. So yes, exactly. I was for a while focusing on what I didn't have, and then I realized I have all that I need, and there are plenty of people who do not have what they need.
Exactly. And it's difficult too, because as individuals, there's only so much you can do to kind of make these vast changes or help out untold numbers of people. But the silver lining of that is, with social media, with projects like the many that you're involved in, you have an interesting kind of avenue and path to kind of be able to connect with people, and a lot of times provide them an escape from the kind of day-to-day, these crushing realities that a lot of us are facing. So
yes,
that
exactly.
Silver lining is there. Yeah. Have you seen a lot of opportunities with that in your work?
When I am being interviewed, I do my best to always mention, hey, there's people who are really struggling out there, and if you can afford it, please donate to the diaper banks and the food banks. That's the main thing I've been trying to get across with pretty much every podcast interview that I've been asked to come upon.
Yeah, and we will definitely share links just for some of the national and also international places that people can do that too. And then I guess kind of shifting a little bit towards maybe the more industry side, the more production side, as everybody kind of figures out what this new landscape kind of looks like. I've talked to some other folks, other professionals in the animation industry, and while a lot of live action productions are obviously on hold, paused temporarily or for the foreseeable future, a lot of folks are saying they're seeing an uptick in kind of animation production and a lot more opportunity. So have you seen a big change in maybe voice acting opportunities for you over the last couple of months?
I would say that the number of voiceover auditions that I've had have definitely increased. And as such, I've definitely had to make changes with the way that I work. Previously, I basically just operated on a good enough for auditions standpoint. So basically, I had a nice USB microphone in my laptop in my closet, and that was good enough. But I've actually been recording production from my home now, and so I've got to step up my game. So I bumped everything up now. I bumped up my microphone, got a preamp, got Source Connect. I don't even think I knew what Pro Tools Source Connect or preamps were a few months ago, and all of a sudden I'm totally educated in those things. I got a sound booth, and that was a very good sound booth, and I really like it. But I looked at it a little bit more closely. And I said, no, I need something that's going to rival production and be close to a professional studio in my home. So next week, I'm getting I'm getting the Fort Knox of sound booths. So we're talking double walls, the premium isolation package and everything like that. And so hopefully that will replicate the quality, or come close to replicating the quality of a professional studio.
Have you, in your career, I mean, your career goes back quite a ways now with movie and TVs, live action, and voice recording as well. Do you have a preference, or are you just kind of a role-by-role basis on how you decide?
The simple answer is I love to work, and there are things that I love about all the different elements, whether it's voiceover, whether it's live action, whether it's a play. There's things that I treasure about. There's different things that I treasure about all those different kinds of acting media. I would say if I could choose a favorite, it would be voiceover. There's something wonderful about being able to focus on your work without having to worry about nearly as many distractions. Hitting your mark exactly, blocking that's needed, making sure that you banana out when you enter the scene and stuff like that. And so I do love the intimacy of working with just a few people in that recording setting, and it's wonderful getting to do as many takes as you want. Just saying, I didn't quite get that. Let me get another try without feeling like you've annoyed 40 people in the crew and cast for having to do another take.
Yeah, and then everybody has to reset the entire physical production. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Now,
the last thing you want to do is to screw up the screw up at the very end of a long tracking shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of auditions, though, in one of your recent tweet-alongs with the Saturday watch parties, which I'll talk about more in a second, I saw that you mentioned your role in Seis Manos actually came about from an audition in Castlevania. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. It was an audition that I looked at it and I said, I don't think I'm right for this. And it was a fantastic role. I believe it was Taka in Castlevania, except for Taka's 20 years old. And there's one thing that my voice is not really naturally suited to as a 20-year-old. So I thought, well, maybe I can talk really high and we can bring him up to a higher level and stuff. And I just said, I'm just going to be myself on this one. Yeah. And because if they want a 20-year-old voice, they can get a 20-year-old for this. So I'm just going to take my natural voice and we'll go from there. And if they like it, they like it. And if they don't, I can live with that. So I did my natural voice, but of course with the best acting that I can possibly do with it. And the amazing casting director, Meredith Lane, she heard it and correctly surmised that my voice is not right for a 20-year-old, but she then reached out and said, hey, I'd like Vic to audition for Seis Manos, and the rest is very wonderful Seis Manos history.
Exactly, and I think that's a great lesson out there too for aspiring actors, be they, on stage, on screen, or voice acting, that and no for a particular role does not necessarily mean no for everything else for the rest of your life.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you get those opportunities by kind of walking through the door. So what was your thought process then when you heard about Chiu for Seis Manos? And walk me through kind of how you first learned about the role and then what led you to saying, yeah, I'd love to get involved.
Well, so then Meredith forwarded on to my wonderful agents, Fox voiceover agency. She forwarded on the specs for Chiu, and I read the specs on it, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is something that I can get into. This is something I totally get into, and of course I had to audition for it.
Sure.
But this was one where I felt comfortable and I felt I could use the full range of my voice. Whether I'm speaking regularly or going a little bit more gravelly and stuff, and so. And I remember the sides were just really interesting, with a supernatural element. There was, a more standard set of sides that dealt with Chiu imparting his martial arts lessons, but there was also a set of sides dealing with Chiu speaking in kind of another realm, and instructing Silencio about that. And I was just like, what kind of wacky project is this? So I was really enthusiastic about that. And then once I heard that I got the role, I was just so pumped and I was freaking out. And it's been a wonderful ride and I'm really enjoying it.
So in preparation for playing the part of Chiu, or any role really that you take on, do you pull a lot from your life experiences where applicable, or what is maybe your process for getting into a role?
The short summary is I take all the life experiences that I can that are relevant, and I apply them, and I play a fun, like, mental game where I bring in people from my real life experiences and my real life experiences into what I do. When it comes time to actually performing, then I just let it go. Then from there, it's all just letting it go naturally. But the preparation is very, very much experience based. And if I don't have the exact experience, then I take it from my imagination. Now, in the case of Chiu, I was fortunate enough to have a martial arts instructor who was a huge influence on me because I grew up really small, really skinny, really bullied for quite a bit of my life, and I had in fact he was Latino as well. His name was Carlos Garcia, and he was my martial arts instructor and mentor, and he was a tough guy, man. He was a tough guy, and so I was able to pull elements of him into my preparation work as Chiu, and there's something very satisfying about being able to pay tribute to him, and also the fact that I get to go full circle where I was a young Chinese kid being mentored by a Latino martial arts instructor, and then decades later I get to be a Chinese martial arts instructor mentoring 3 Latino kids. So that was nice to be able to pay tribute to Carlos. And in fact, actually, it made me say, where did Carlos go? And like I searched and I finally reconnected with him, and he felt he was flattered that I got to pay tribute to him with Seis Manos.
That's really cool, and it actually is it adds to this kind of interesting mythology about the making of this show itself. I had a chance, again, to talk to the creative team behind the scenes earlier today, and they talked about so many of these, I think they called them sort of synchronicities or sort of synergies between what they were doing and what was happening in the real world and everything along the way to making Seis Manos a reality. And that story is kind of another interesting one that adds another interesting wrinkle to how this whole plot kind of played out. Seis Manos is interesting for a number of reasons. It also walks this line between kind of paying homage to things of the past, like blaxploitation films, kung fu, martial arts movies with sometimes notoriously bad English dubbing, all kinds of things. But were you at all nervous about maybe stepping into a role of, a Chinese martial arts master that could have come across as a stereotype if the writing wasn't quite what it was in the show?
I'm definitely wary of that when I am offered a role, and if it's something that I feel is a negative stereotype, I won't do it. But in the case of Seis Manos, I was reading it, and it was clear that this was not your ordinary martial arts instructor, and this is not your ordinary martial arts animated series. So this Seis Manos is clearly different. It definitely is a concern, but with the writing of Seis Manos, once I started reading the scripts and everything and really getting to dig into it, any fears that I had or concerns were immediately put to rest.
Yeah, and in our conversations earlier, we talked how it wasn't about an approach of just like checking boxes, like yep, diversity, check, we're good there. It was about kind of shaping the story around the characters that made the most sense for those roles. So what can you maybe comment on how your particular character fits into the overall story, and if you had any thoughts on maybe some of the other characters you played opposite, or actors you played opposite?
Sure. Actually, in fact, just talking about how Seis Manos takes some of the standard tropes and turns them on their heads. Um, trying to pick my words carefully,
right.
but in episode 1, the introduction of Domingo, I immediately knew what I thought. I thought that I knew what was going to happen.
Right.
So I just remember, okay, so he's going to be the annoying rugrat. He wants to join he wants to join the club. They're going to be like, no, leave us alone, and like, but he's going to keep on persisting and pestering and then at one point the Seis Manos, they're all going to be trapped in this tiny little room, and there's only one person who can squeeze through the sewer pipes to get into that room to rescue him, and that's gonna be Domingo. And I said so, and I was like, okay, I get it. It's a trope, but I buy it because I like Domingo, and that doesn't happen. So reading that made me just say, oh yeah, this is definitely a different project.
Yeah, it definitely lets you know right off the bat in episode 1, what the themes are, what the maturity level is, and the fact that it's going to be something you are not expecting pretty much every turn. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what was that like, being able to play kind of like people of color within that cast?
Oh, it's fantastic. As you know, I've been an actor for a very long time, more than 2 decades. And I can remember showing up on set and being the only person in the cast of color. Mm-hmm. And it's fine. I was honored and happy to be there, but it makes you, the phrase token minority comes into your mind when you see that. And so the thing is, when you see Seis Manos, you see a whole world of Latinx characters, you realize, oh, this is the exact wonderful counterpart to token minority. This is true representation here, because when you have only one person of color, that person just has to be the Asian character or the Latin character or the Black character. But with Seis Manos, you have a whole rich world of Latinx characters. So then each one can be their own character. They can, one can be petulant, one can be feisty, one can be good-natured drunk. They can all be themselves. And instead of being one color, you just get a rich tapestry of characters, and it's wonderful this way.
Speaking of the show and your role as well, did you happen to voice any other roles in the series beyond kind of like scratch dialogue?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I have. And in fact, I had people mention to me, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I was upset at what happened to your character early on," and I was like, stick around. There's more. And trust me, you haven't heard the last of me. So I get to voice a significant element going forward. So yes, Chiu has a brother. He has a brother named Lo, and Lo is like him in some respects and is very, very different in other respects. And and again, it's wonderful because it's Seis Manos here, so things are not always as they appear. Lo's first introduction changes significantly as the storyline develops. And so what a wonderful opportunity for me to get to use all elements of my voice, the full range of my voice. Whether I'm speaking in a friendly sort of way or in a much more menacing sort of way, Lo was incredibly fun to do, and I just love how the storyline progresses with Lo taking up the torch, taking up Chiu's torch.
When Lo first appeared the first time that I was watching it, I noticed that there was not a mention of who voiced Lo, and I was like, you know what? It would be really cool if that was still Vic. I said, but I couldn't find information on that anywhere. So I'm glad you confirmed my suspicions all these months later.
Oh yes, yeah. No. Voicing low is a trip. It's kind of like I take the Chiu's voice, but then I just add an element of an edge and a little bit more of a strength and almost a harshness to it. So it's fun trying to balance Chiu and low together.
Well, and I definitely know what my reaction was. First of all, losing Chiu and only seeing him in the flashbacks, and then at the introduction of Lo and how the events transpire there. But what was your reaction when you read, you got the audition, you got the role, you came in, and then you read that Chiu's not around very long. So what was your reaction to how that played out?
I was told how many episodes I was going to do, but I remember in the audition there were sides for Chiu and Lo, so I knew that I would be voicing both characters, but I definitely didn't realize the fate that was going to be. I didn't realize Chiu's fate, and I definitely didn't see the turn that Lo was going to take. So it was very interesting just reading things, and I just remember going back and rereading passages of the Seis Manos script when I was prepping, and just think, wait, did that really happen? And I was like, okay, yeah, that really did happen. It really was like that.
Pulling back a little bit to a bit higher level, but I love the fact that Powerhouse, the crew there, and also the cast members, including yourself, have been putting on these watch parties on Saturday mornings, bringing back the classic Saturday morning cartoons that are, even our podcast is named after. But what's your experience been like being able to be part of those things and interacting, directly with the fans?
But first of all, the watch parties have been so much fun. Watching it with a fresh set of eyes has been a blast, and just seeing all this stuff that I've been watching so intently, when it first came out and stuff like that, has reawakened all these wonderful memories of the process of recording this, as well as all our memories from Comic-Con being together and meeting all the rest of the cast and the crew and the staff, and engaging with the fans has been the best, and it has become very, very clear to me, if it wasn't already, which honestly was already very clear to me, but the most enthusiastic fans are Angelica Vale's fans. They freaking love her. When we're in San Diego, when we're walking along the street in San Diego, her fans were running up to her and crying. They would cry because they were so excited to meet her, and like just their sincerity and their enthusiasm for her comes through when you're walking down the street in Comic-Con, and it comes through in their tweets. They love her, and honestly, it's so well deserved because she is just so much fun to be around with. She's just so enthusiastic and so sincere and just a wonderful person. So I can definitely understand why her fans love her so much.
Well, and I also love, too, that Seis Manos is a show that allows fans like that to kind of see themselves represented on screen in some way. And we could talk people of color, we could talk about different backgrounds, we could talk about kind of just kung fu enthusiasts or practitioners of martial arts. There's even characters who, we have a mute character who's a main player. We have another, disabled character who's a main supporting player in this too. There's so many people who are on screen that you never get to see in normal, mainstream stuff. So it's really cool that you guys are able to connect with your fans on that level too.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, that is true representation, and I'm so proud of Seis Manos for its true representation.
How has your experience been kind of watching the rest of Seis Manos play out? Because obviously when you're in the booth, you have, your sides and you're focused on your character's arc and part to play. But are you also a fan too of kind of just like how the story plays out?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of the way the whole thing plays out. And it's humbling because it's like I do my part and I work very hard at it, and I hope that I do a good job with it. But then just to see glimpses of everything that goes on behind the scenes, glimpses of these storyboards, glimpses of these sketches, glimpses of Carl Teal conducting an entire orchestra to put the score together and the music together. humbling to see what your small part is and how it fits in with this enormous team of people all doing the incredible, talented work to put together an amazing whole.
And what's interesting, I think, about pretty much everything that you just said is we get to see Chiu's character, who I would actually love to just kind of like study under and have as a mentor, even just like a life coach. But we also get to see, the other character that you play as well on the other side of that coin. But both of them feel like we're just getting started with some of this mythology. And in speaking with the creative team again, I know that they've scripted out a second season. They have some season 3 laid out because of early negotiations kind of with Netflix. They need to have sort of this 3-season, 3-arc structure in mind. But if you're okay with talking about it, have you seen any material beyond what is currently available from the first season?
I can speak freely because I have not seen the material. So I've heard little snippets that have been mentioned to me offhand, but I've not seen any material. But boy, would I love to see the material.
What would you maybe hope to see one of your characters accomplish or get to see more of? Like, what did season 1 raise questions about your characters in you that you would love to see maybe some conclusions in future seasons?
The way the final episode ends, you can see that Lo has plans, and I want to know more about his plans. You can see that he has a team, but he's gathered a team behind him, and there's more in store for Lo, I feel like, and I would love for Lo to get to do his Lo thing with even more power and more reach and more help. So I would love to see that. And I would love also just to continue to hear more backstory. There already is, some very satisfying backstory about Chiu and Lo throughout the season. But I love backstory. I love getting glimpses of what makes the character what they are. So I would love to continue to hear more backstory about them, as well as the Seis Manos, of course.
Oh, of course. Would you say you gravitate maybe more towards characters on the heroic side or the villainous side? Which one of those are more fun to play for you?
Here's the thing. I love playing tough guys. Yeah. Sorry, I've got a baby napping in the other room, so I can't go into full, screaming mode. But here's the thing is, I love playing tough guys because they make me feel like the badass that I am not in real life. So that's the thing is, because I tend to be more of a nice guy, I think I enjoy playing bad guys and tough guys, because that's just a different world from my real life. And, of course, part of the joy of acting is playing make-believe.
Now I'm going to take that comment and I'm going to pivot away from Seis Manos for just a second, because you also recently voiced Tseng in the awesome and epic Final Fantasy VII Remake. So what can you maybe talk about coming to that character? Were you familiar with the original? What was it like for you to get to voice that character?
Oh my gosh, I was so excited. The funny thing is that I didn't know the project that I was on until I walked into this recording session.
Oh wow!
and because of course, I was under NDA, and so it only had a code name, and so I was happy, of course, to be working on it, but I didn't know what it was. And then I walk in, and they said, "Okay, so this is Final Fantasy," and I'm sure my jaw just dropped. And I was like, "Whoa!" So that kind of blew my mind, and of course the hardest part about being on an NDA is just not telling anybody what you're working on.
Exactly.
But yes, with Tseng, what was really interesting was, as we're going through it, I was having difficulty grasping the character because I couldn't figure out, is he a good guy? In which case I'll try to make his voice, very gentle and stuff, or is he a bad guy? Or in which case I'll try to make him harsher and a little stronger and meaner and stuff. And then it just occurred to me. I said, wait a second. Is Song a bad guy, or is he a good guy, or is he ambiguous? And they're like, he's ambiguous. I'm like, okay, all right. And so suddenly that all made so much sense to me because yes, it's like all of us, we have a good side, a sentimental, loving side, and we've got, maybe a more callous side, a more practical, side that's capable of doing things. And so I loved how fully fleshed Song was because of that ambiguity. And once I realized that the key phrase for me was ambiguous, then that helped me a lot with voicing his character.
Well, I'm hoping that we get to see more of that character, more of you in that franchise. Most people, myself included, don't really know what the plans are for the rollout for that. But did you, if you were still under NDA, this is fine, but did you voice any other characters for that project, or were you on board for any other parts to play?
I'll simply just say that I have not heard anything beyond what I have done. So
that's fair enough. So you're in the same boat as the rest of us as we wait to hear more. What's interesting, it's funny, we're both waiting on more Final Fantasy, and we're also waiting on more Seis Manos. So thankfully, you guys are continuing these watch parties on Saturday. But as I wrap up here with you today, what else are you maybe currently working on that you can talk about and would like to share with your fans out there? Yeah.
Of course. And it's so funny because I'm sure you're constantly just used to hearing, oh, I'm working on this cool project, but I can't tell you about it. I'm working on this very cool project, can't tell you about it, et cetera, right?
Yeah, but it's always good to be able to revisit those and be like, oh, that's what you were talking about.
Exactly. What I can say is that I'm playing a fantastically fun role on an upcoming episode of Ben 10,
cool.
the Cartoon Network show. And in fact, actually, it was directed by Colette Sunderman, who directed me for some of the song scenes in Final Fantasy VII. So, it's been fun working with her on both Final Fantasy VII Remake as well as Ben 10. But this role is really cool, and I am super excited about that. I don't know when it's coming up, but I'll be trumpeting it once that role comes out.
And we would be happy to help you do that.
Thank you.
We've talked about voice direction a little bit, so maybe my last question for you today is, have you given any consideration to maybe being on the other side of the glass? Is that something that you'd be interested in helping other actors kind of find their voice and shepherd them through a project?
I would love to. I think that would be an absolute blast. I'm sure there's so much that I don't know about it, but that's okay because you got to start somewhere, right? And it's funny because I actually remember when Rob Paulson directed me on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. The way he described it, he just said, "Oh yeah, and I started directing because they just said, hey, do you want to direct this episode?" And then I was like, sure. So at least that was my impression, was they simply just offered it to him, and boy, is he a great voice director. So yes, I would love to direct if I get the opportunity, but of course I am mighty happy being a voice actor. There's great joy in that too.
Fantastic. Well, I want to say thanks again so much for your time today, for sharing a little bit of insight into the projects that you're currently working on as we sit and wait and hope for more to come. But thank you again. All the best to you and yours, and keep us posted.
Thank you so much, Dave. Really appreciate it.